Hi, I'm Jenny Ray, the Managing Director of Management Consulted, and today I'm bringing you an additional installment in our case interview series. Specifically today, I'm talking about how cases are scored. This is something that is not often revealed, and you will never hear in an information session from a company. But I'm going to pull back the veil today and help you understand exactly what's being measured and how you're being scored when you're going through the case interview process. I'm going to break this down into three parts. The first is I want you to understand inside each question how a case is scored. Then I want you to understand how overall the case is scored. And finally, I want you to understand the differences in scoring between the first and the second round. So I'm going to break up the two of those. First of all, the case by question and then the case overall, and then I'm going to highlight the differences between the rounds. So let's get started. The cases are scored by question. And in particular, in the first round, case questions are really critical because each one of them is given an individual score. The reason that cases are scored in the first place is that it's really important for there to be standardization across multiple different interviews. In a first round of, say, 60 people that are interviewed, you wouldn't have one person do all 60 of the interviews. You would have up to 12 interviewers, and each one of them would interview people twice. So you would have multiple different interviewers that are scoring everybody. So each of the sections of the case will be given a different score. At Bain, our sections were 4 points, but at other firms, there are different numbers of points. So today I'm highlighting the Management Consulted provided 5-point scale that we include in our Consulting Interview Bible. I'm going to walk through an example of how each of these sections are scored. To identify the way that questions in particular are scored, today I'm going to use an example of an opening question. And in an opening question, we've got the 5-point scale. So what I'm going to do is walk through each of the 5 points and how you would fall into bucket 1, 2, 3, 4, or 5. And in particular, I'm going to focus on bucket 5 because that's the one that everyone is aiming for. So if you get a 1, it's because you didn't recap the background at all. They read you the background and you didn't say anything afterwards. You didn't even demonstrate that you were listening to them. If you get a 2, it's because you provided a recap, but it was incredibly detailed or just totally blown out of proportion. If you get a 3, it's because you gave a recap, but it was completely unstructured. You were basically just rattling off a list of facts, a stream of consciousness in the order that you remembered them. If you get a 4, it's because you were structured but simple. So you didn't demonstrate an advanced level of understanding in the case. You just gave a quick recap and assumed some things that maybe you shouldn't have assumed. For 5, the candidate provides a clear, concise, structured response and, if appropriate, asks 1 to 3 clarifying questions. For number 5, if you want to rank in the highest bucket, it's really important that you use good structure, you demonstrate clarity, and you're totally complete when you go through the recap. This is just an example of how a per question scoring item would be ranked and how you want to fall into the top bucket. On top of this, there are a few additional pieces that will make sense for the firm to incorporate, and the interviewer will be responsible for evaluating you on those key metrics. There'll be summary items. So for example, in the Management Consulted scoring, we have a couple of these. First, we have the overall structure, that you consistently as a candidate present your ideas in logical lists. The second is that we identify overall problem-solving ability. This focuses on your ability to maintain awareness of the key problem and ultimately solve it at the end of the case. And finally, we focus on overall communication. How clearly do you communicate your ideas? How collaborative are you? How structured are you in your approach when you're actually communicating the process? So on top of the sum of each of the individual questions, there will be these overarching pieces that the interviewer will be responsible for scoring. Once the scores are completed, the scores will be added up between the 2 interviewers that you interview with, or 3 if that's applicable, and averaged across them. And then you'll be placed into a spreadsheet where you'll be ranked. So for example, if there are 60 people that interview in first rounds, in the spreadsheet, the goal is to take 10 to 12 usually to second rounds. Because of this, it's important that you understand that it's not only a science, so it's not just the pure ranking, but there is some discussion that happens. Usually the people that are placed into the top 10 are discussed, and if anybody is not everyone's favorite, they may pull somebody out. In addition, somebody who's on the margin, they may decide to take to the final rounds because there isn't a perfect number that they're looking for. So at the end of the day, there is some discussion that happens amongst the interviewers outside of the scoring. But for the most part, in the first round, the scoring is king. In the second round, there isn't the same type of numerical scoring that usually happens. The key thing that happens is that managers or partners, the more senior people who interview you, have to vote for you on a binary scale. 1 is I would like to work with and manage this person on their first case on the job. 0 is I would not like to work with this person. And they're voting one way or the other. Will this person make me look good? Will I enjoy working with them? Are they the type of person that I want on my team? So a 1 is yes, a 0 is no. And at the end of the day, they will get together. If they all agree, then the decision is made. If they disagree, then discussion will happen. And that's how the decision at the final round ends up going. So it's really important that as you're going through the process, you understand what's happening behind the scenes from a scoring perspective. It's also important for you to understand that one piece of the case doesn't make or break the entire case. It's the overall score. So it is really important for you to make sure that even if you fail one small piece of the case, you recover from it and you keep going, because that may make the difference between getting to the next round and ultimately getting the offer or not. If you've got questions about case scoring, we've got tons of information about it in our Consulting Interview Bible. We have our case bank that you can try these case scoring metrics on, and we also have lots of information at our website at managementconsulted.com.